Welcome to another session of QuickDraw. Today I'm going to be demonstrating how I digitally ink page 66 of the Raising Dragons graphic novel. There's my pen tablet, my monitor, my keyboard, pretty much the things I need. Okay, here we go. So let's open up Manga Studio. Let me find Raising Dragons here. There it is, page 66. I have imported already here the rough pencils using Photoshop. I turned them blue. It's very common to use blue as an underline and makes drawing black on top much easier. So here we go. Let's get started. Here's Bonnie's eyes, her nose. You get the idea. So this is a close-up of Bonnie, Silver, from Raising Dragons. This is a very emotional scene. She's mourning the loss of her mother. And if you couldn't tell, she's crying. There's the tear. A little bit dripping down. Yeah, it's a pretty tragic tale. I recommend you read the book and find out. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Right off the bat, if you couldn't tell, I rotate the canvas quite frequently, and I zoom in and out a lot. I do this all via keyboard shortcuts, so I don't have to move my mouse or my tablet out of the way to pick the tools from the toolbar. I just hit the right keys on the keyboard and bam, zoom, or bam, rotate. Very quick, very easy. And because this video is sped up, I think it might give me a bit of a headache. I apologize ahead of time if it's a little hard to watch. This video is sped up 7.5 times, which is 750% normal speed. See here, I do a lot of cross-hatching for the bark. It adds texture. Within the lines, I use the selection tool so that I don't have to worry about cross-hatching beyond the little engraved area. It's kind of a cheat. Alright, panel number 1 is done. Here we go, panel number 2. This page is kind of easy. There's only 2 panels to worry about. So we are Billy. Now on this particular drawing, I didn't like the placement of Billy's right eye, so what I do is I actually move the original, draw over it where I want it to be, and then I move it back. So you can tell the eye is a little off. I didn't like it the first time around, which is why now I ink it. I have the option to change it. For the better, I think. Among other things, I might add a few more lines. Like I mentioned in my previous video, the pencils that I draw are not necessarily set in stone where I'm going to draw later on. Though they're very helpful, I have the freedom to improvise anytime I want, if I feel that it will actually improve the image. Again, like I mentioned, lots of rotation, lots of zooming. The reason that I rotate the canvas so much is because I'm right-handed, so it's easy for me to do strokes and curves at a certain angle of my wrist. Unfortunately, that means that the other side is a little harder to do. So by tilting the canvas, it means I don't have to tilt my hand or the tablet to get that right feel of the stroke of my hand, the motion. I'm sure other artists out there can agree with me when it comes to the comfort and the placement of the drawing pad and your wrist and how that works. start to finish, I'm going to say that this drawing took me about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to do. That's pretty common for me, to take about 2 hours to pencil, 2 hours to ink, and no, not 2 hours to color. That one actually takes a little longer, but I'll go through that in another video. I know it happens very quickly, but if you look on the right side, I have my layers, and I tend to create new layers for the different objects in the panel. So for instance, Bonnie and Billy are on their own layer, the tree behind them is on another layer, the leaves I will draw in a moment, I'll draw on its own layer. The reason for that is if I want to do colored outlines or effects, fades, that sort of thing, it makes it much easier to have the layers separated so that one effect does not happen on the rest. So if I decide to fade out the trees in the back, for instance, I don't want to fade out the characters in the foreground. So keeping them on separate layers just seems pretty obvious. Go again, selecting the area so that I don't have to worry about my cross-hatching leaving the lines that I draw. It makes it very easy, less messy. Here we go, the leaves. Lots and lots of leaves. I'm gonna say this was this was the most tedious part of drawing this page. And drawing people is fun. Drawing hundreds of leaves isn't. But it's something that I can't skip out on. The leaves gotta look good. They gotta look like leaves, which is amazing because sometimes you'll notice when I start drawing the leaves in the real faraway background, they really just become squiggly lines, and yet amongst all the squiggles zoomed out it looks believable, like a bunch of leaves scattered on the ground. I guess that's just a part of the concept of the reader using their imagination and make-believing the lines and bringing life to it, when in reality it really is just a bunch of squiggles. Squiggles, squiggles, squiggles. Oh, branch. More squiggles. I really kind of improvise it. Really, it's a messy process. I don't have a science for it. Up close, you can see how messy it is. When you zoom out, it just comes together. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. Now the other side. So the leaves in the foreground obviously have the most detail, a more definite shape, and the further up, the further back they go, the more simpler they get, and that's pretty common. What I also tend to do is I adjust the stroke width of my pen tool. What I mean by stroke is I mean how thick the lines are. That's the term. In illustrating software, they call it stroke. And so with objects in the background, I tend to have a smaller or a thinner stroke. Characters in the foreground have the highest stroke, so that they're very thick lines. They're bold, they stand out, they're kind of in your face, it's the focus of the panel. Here, although the background is very detailed, it's not meant to be the focus of this particular panel. Billy and Bonnie are going to be the primary area where your eyes are drawn to. These leaves look very funny. They look like hands poking out. Thanks to Bryan Davis for including some photos of the area here. It enabled me to actually draw the plants, the trees, accurately to their location in the story. More panels, more layers, more trees. Yeah, I must say this part took me a while. It was not enjoyable, but it had to be done. I drew it in pencils, therefore I figured it's worth the effort inking it in. I lowered the opacity on the layer. As you can tell, it grayed out. I did this for the reason because these two trees here are the closest to the main tree, and I actually filled them in with white so that I can draw the trees behind them without worrying about them showing through. And so I lowered the opacity of the main tree and Billy and Bonnie so that I can better erase the lines and select it, fill it in. So you can tell for these trees I don't have to rotate the canvas quite as much. Mostly because it's up and down motions, it's much easier on the wrist. So now that I have that tree filled in white, I can draw these without worrying about overlap. Oh, missed a spot. Whenever I do overlap, I do have to erase the little areas. If you can tell, I did that just a few times. Now, the trees in the very back have a lower opacity. They're a lighter shade of gray. Things, as they are further in the distance, the more faded out they are due to the atmosphere, mist, and things like that. Alright, so I think the drawing part is done. I'm happy with that. So now it's time to add the text. The text, of course, is directly from the book, adapted by my wife who wrote the script. So she was the one who went through the entire book and picked and chose what parts had to stay, what parts had to go, which text and words were important. The graphic novel is much, much shorter. It's only going to be 150 pages. The actual story itself, I think, is over 400 pages, so if you can tell, there's got to be some cuts. So really only the necessary parts of the story really made it into the graphic novel. So here we are, finished page, word bubbles and all. Lots of black, lots of cross-hatching, lots of detail. Look at those leaves. So there it is. And here it is colored with the flat colors. I will be demonstrating this in another video. And finally, the shading. This is where the life is given to the image. It's awesome, isn't it? Well, thanks for watching this video. I hope you liked it. Please comment if you have any questions. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. And if you get a chance, hit me up on Google+. Add me to your circles and ask me questions if you need to. If you want to see more of my artwork, please check out my website. It's jamesartville.com. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.